Hello and welcome to Damien's Midweek Markets, the show where I talk about what is driving investment markets and what to look out for in the days and weeks ahead. Now, this week, not a lot has actually happened in investment markets. They've been on almost a pause, a limbo because of Thanksgiving in America, and US markets are actually closed on Thursday. So we had a shortened week. So I'm taking the opportunity to talk about something very seasonal, which is the Santa rally. Now, the Santa rally is a phenomenon whereby equity markets are supposed to rally in the lead up to Christmas, particularly the month of December. But there is another version which suggests it's actually just the period between Christmas and the second trading day of January. So whichever version you hear, is it actually true? Now, there is evidence, statistical evidence to suggest that the phenomenon does actually exist. So if you take the FTSE 100, for example, for 25 of the last 30 years, the UK stock market has rallied during the month of December, and it typically is up around about 2% during that month. Now, in the US, there is a similar pattern. Now, in the UK, it was around about an 80% chance that it might occur, which is obviously statistically significant. In the US, it's slightly lower at about sort of 75%. So there is evidence to suggest that markets do particularly well in December. And why is that? Of course, there is the sort of euphoria around Christmas, but one of the reasons people suggest is that fund managers and asset managers start to try and chase performance into the year end to try and play catch up and to boost their portfolio so they take more risk. And it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you go and look at the Google search data right now, you will see that the search volumes for the term Santa rally are already picking up, and that's now. So when does the Santa rally typically start? Well, the evidence is pretty inconclusive. The research that I've carried out for 80/20 investor members a number of years ago, which I may well update this year, suggested that it could start from the middle of November, but it isn't typical. It isn't always going to start then. It varies. And of course, you always get anomalies as well. Don't forget last year, 2018, was a disaster. So the stock market fell about 3.5% right into the Christmas Eve bottom. And that was the bottom which signaled the start of the rally that we're still enjoying at this point, almost a year later. So with the Santa rally, macro themes do overwhelm from time to time. So that was last year. That was the slowing economic growth globally, and of course the central banks around the world, particularly the Fed, being on a slight tightening mode. So this year we don't have the Fed tightening, we have them being very supportive, but it just goes to show macro themes can overwhelm. So we still have trade issues as we did last year. So it is something certainly to bear in mind. Now, there is no evidence to suggest that you can predict when a Santa rally may occur and when it doesn't by looking at what's happened in the 11 months prior to December. In fact, there's no correlation at all. In the research piece I talked about earlier, there was one hint that suggested that if you had a strong market move, whether it's up or down, in the preceding months ahead of December, then it was perhaps a little bit more likely that you would get a Santa rally. And in that research piece, I looked at about the level of the rally. Could you try and predict that? And that's something for 80/20 investor members to look at. And as I say, I may well update that. But there's no correlation between what went on in the 11 months prior to a Santa rally or indeed when we didn't have one. So we'll have to see what happens in 2019, but we've had a very strong October and November with the S&P 500 being up over 9% since the beginning of October. So maybe the signs are positive for this year. We will see. So that is it for this week on Damien's Midweek Markets. You can contact me via email, damien@moneytothemasses.com, and of course via Twitter, money to the masses with the number 2. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook.